see how this works. Okay, so far we pretty much covered how to step off a wall plate using your tape measure. I've kind of gone over that a lot in depth. The concept is really important, but there's more to add to it. A lot of times when we look at our floor plans, it won't give us all the measurements to intersecting walls or windows from one exterior wall all the way through, so we can just pull our tape from one spot. We'll get them. I have some measurements right here. I pulled off a set of plans I had on my phone just to kind of accurately reflect what you would find. I've got 9'8", then hooking 7'11", hooking 11 2.5, looking 3 1 inch, hooking 11 2.5 again, and then 5 3. So all those measurements consecutively, you could hook each wall as you go, but it would be much more, it'd be easier to go ahead and hook one side and just get and lay all the points out. Now, if you're like me, I'm gonna get real confused trying to add all that math. It's not to the 10th, it's to the 12th. So for me, I would rather kind of go at it about a different way, and that's where this method I have comes into play. So first off, and it's going to be hard. If I had 16-foot runs, I could do it much easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off of every foot here. I'm just going to go 2 foot for the 9. For the 7 foot, I'll do 3. For the 11, I'll do 4. And then probably I'm going to end up running out of board because these are just little 4-foot lengths. But anyway, the first one is going to easily go 2'8". So I'll just mark that out. But before I do that, I would mark my 16-inch layout. So that'd be 1'3 1/4, I guess. And of course, I'd mark all those up until I got to the I don't know. I think it's a wall intersection. 2'8". That's 2'8". So that would be set back from where that wall intersection is. Okay, and then from there, I've got a 3'11". So this is where the magic starts to happen. So I burn 3'11". Okay, now I'm measuring to where it falls, and it's going to be 6 foot 7 inches. So now I'll hook this into the first board, and I got 3 foot 8.5. So I'll put that on the next one, and I go to 6 foot 7 inches, and that's my next layout point right there. So that's set back for that wall. Okay, so let's add them together. I got 2 foot 8 inches plus 3'11". So that's 5. What's that? 17. 19 inches. So that's going to be 6 foot. 12 minus 19 is 7. 6 foot 7. So let me check to see 6 foot. 6 foot 7. So it's right on the money. And I wanted to do more. You basically do the same exact thing, but the next one that you step with, which would be 4 foot 2.5, I would burn the 4 foot 2.5 on the next board. Right? Yeah, see, I'm on the second one. I burn that, and now I get my measurement here. I do the same exact thing, but I got to add all these up, right? So then I would come back to what this measurement originally was. I had to write that when I first measured it, whatever it is, 7 foot 2 or 5 or whatever it is. And then so if I'll go back to that, I'm just going to pretend it was 7 foot 5. Then 7 foot 5 here. Then I come to 8 foot 2.5 to the end of the board. Now I come to this end, and then whatever my last layout point is, I'm adding them all up. So now I've got 10 foot, and then whatever is the rest of it. I got to keep that going throughout in order to basically to add. I don't know if you can see the measurements, but it would be, here's my first one. I'm adding this to this to this. And then whatever that total is, I'm using the measuring tape to actually capture the overall measurement. So I'm not even measuring the lengths of these boards really. I'm using what's given, and it's going to cut me, once I get to the end of it, it's going to cut me off at that last measurement. And that's where I'll put CO or cut off or annotate it, however you want to annotate it. But that's where I make my cut. So in times of past, you know, in some videos past, just for kind of teaching purposes, and you can use this whenever you're just, you know, I've got to put some deadwood in over a 16-foot run or something. You know, I can measure the whole length and then come back and, you know, mark out a 16-foot 1-inch piece, and then whatever the finish out is, mark that and cut it. So there is a way that becomes useful, but now that we have this method for laying out the plates, we don't have to actually measure the board anymore. We can go as we go, and like I said, as you're going, you would be marking out the layout, whatever your on-center spacing is, if it's 16 or whatever, you know, 20, whatever it is, you mark those as you go on your first piece. Now that's the only time, because remember, we got this plate laid out right here, this wall plate, and now we can lay out the fascia, you know, and, you know, like if this is a double plate, we lay out the 2-foot on center, and then we got the next wall plate. We can stack them all together nicely on the bench, line it up with one layout, put a framing square across it, inscribe it, and now we have everything laid out, the entire, you know, fascia, wall plate, to a beam in the middle if there was one, or whatever other walls you could throw up here, as long as you can keep it together, not get confused. You could do interior walls as well. It's just going to add a lot of confusion though if you try to go, you know, too far into it. So I would only do one exterior. I would do my ridge, both sets of fascia. You ask, why are you laying fascia out? Well, it's good to lay out the fascia because when you get up there, and if it's just one man, I can look at any layout and I can know exactly what rafter tail I'm going to, and put my rafter tail on that layout and nail it, and then I'm pulling every other rafter tail to their layout. You know, it may take a little work to get everything lined up, and you may want to actually go to the far end and nail either your hip or your gable just to make sure those line up. And then the other ones, of course, they'll have a little bit of wiggle room, and that's going to help. A lot of times that'll help bow your rafters in or out, so you don't have to do as much work to get those online. The ridge is, laying the ridge out is a no-brainer, you know, because you're going to lay that out what your double top plate is. And you can also handle stuff with the ridge, like, I mean, you're also going to have the length of the ridge. You can lay the length of the ridge out because it's going to be your wall plate plus your overhang minus your barge rafter thickness, and that can all be taken care of right there. So you have a stack on on your horses, that's everything stacked up right there, ready to go in order. You know, on this side I have my fascia, you know, and everything. The ends of these are all laid out, you know, and so if you pick up a random board, I know where it's going to go based upon the labeling. So if I see F1, it's fascia, the first run from whatever side it's designated to work from. Or if you want to designate east, west, north, south, you know, however you want to do that. But you'll be able to grab any piece in the stack and know where it goes. All the finish outs will be given to you, as long as you know from the plans, as long as you know your building length. So you'll never have to go measure a finish out. I honestly, just being perfectly honest, when I watch a lot of framing videos, I see guys, you know, that bent over at the plate, you know, on the concrete or on the deck, and you know they're pulling their tape measure along and they're going by and doing each layout, and I just no disrespect to those guys because it's always been done that way, but when you finally find a better way to do this, that you know, and you know, a lot of guys will say, oh, you know, I can handle it, I'm not worried about that. there's nothing to prove here. This is not about proving that you're a tough guy. This is about an instruction of a faster way. If layout of all the wall plates and snapping the lines and getting up your first walls used to take 2 or 3 hours to get to that point, this right here is bringing you down into minutes. So what used to take hours is now going to take you 15 to 20 minutes to lay out the entire, not the interior walls necessarily, because it's going to take a little more understanding of, you know, not every interior wall starts at the full building length. You know, so you have to do a little bit more, and some of those might be better to just lay those out, you know, kind of like where they go, and do those individually, especially for a bigger house with a lot of walls. But if you get good with practice, you could be able to shoot those out as well. So we're taking hours down to minutes. So, you know, we're definitely throwing up walls within the first 30 minutes. I'm throwing you a set of wall plates, you know, and go grab your studs. Let's get, you know, headers are cut, or start. I'm going to cut your headers as you're going, like we're laying track. You throwing your studs in, your headers are coming right behind it. And jacks, you know, all that stuff, you can cut jacks right there on the spot. Jam those in, you know, put the jack in tight to the header. You can nail it off if you want, and then cut it with the saw after, you know, or cut it on the benches, whatever's faster. But this is going to definitely keep, you know, you're definitely going to, no one's going to be standing around waiting for some, you know, if I give this to a guy and say, go build the wall, and he builds the wall, I'm throwing him some more plates. So this is probably one of the last things I could really bring to the table for YouTube for speed. If you master this method, and for you guys that really want to learn, go get 3 or 4 16-footers and get you a set of tables, and you know, look at some building plans and just come up with something realistic to lay out. Lay out a 50-foot section of wall right there at the benches. You never have to move anywhere. You lay out that. You could lay out 100-foot of wall right there on your benches without moving. All you're doing is moving your tape measure back and forth, and just focus and make sure that you get it on the dot, and you won't have any problems. If you're over a 1/4 inch, you might end up being in a long run. You might end up being like a 1/4 inch over. Just keep your little saw over there and trim it off, you know. But no need to walk back and forth and measuring and calling out doing all these different things. You can provide it to them right there.